In this video, we're going to learn how to compute direct labor variances. First, before we go into the model, I'm going to direct your attention to the standard cost card. The standard cost card, once again, is our standard or our budget for 1 unit of output. For this example, we're going to focus on one line over here, our direct labor. You notice our standard for direct labor that it takes 0.75 or 3/4 of an hour to produce 1 unit of product. The standard price of our labor is $12 per hour, so 1 unit contains $9 of labor, which is 0.75 multiplied by 12. Now, at the end of the year, we're going to take a look at our actual results, and we see at the end of the year that we have used 10,200 labor hours, and the total cost of our labor is $119,850. So let's go back to the variance model that we used before. So, if you remember, on the left, we're going to put our actual labor cost, and on the right, we're going to put our standard labor cost. So remember, in alphabetical order, actual and standard. How do we compute our actual labor cost? Our actual labor cost is the actual quantity of labor, which is the actual direct labor hours used, multiplied by the actual price. But remember, we're not really going to need the actual price because we know the total actual cost of our labor, $119,850. On the right-hand side, we calculate our standard cost of labor, which is the standard quantity of labor, multiplied by the standard price of labor. Now, if you remember, between the left-hand prong and the middle prong, we want to calculate a price variance, and between the middle prong and the right-hand prong, we want to calculate a quantity variance. So remember, price and quantity in alphabetical order. So between the left-hand prong and the middle prong, we want a price variance. Price variance means change the price. So between the left-hand prong and the middle prong, we will not change the quantity. We'll use the actual quantity of labor, but we will change the price from the actual price to the standard price. So the difference between the two outside prongs becomes our total variance. The difference between the left-hand prong and the middle prong becomes our price variance. Notice that quantity and quantity are the same, actual and actual, but the price varies, actual price and standard price. Between the middle prong and the right-hand prong, we want to measure a quantity variance. Notice that price is the same, standard price and standard price, but the quantity varies, standard quantity and actual quantity. Now all we have to do is start filling in numbers and do a couple of multiplications, a couple of subtractions. We're done with the problem. The only number that is not given is the standard quantity of labor. So our actual cost of labor is given in our actual results. We can see our total cost of labor, $119,850. You can calculate the actual price if you want, but it's really not necessary. It's not used anyplace else. In the middle prong, we want to take the actual quantity and multiply it by the standard price. So we can see under our actual results, the actual labor hour used, 10,200. That is our actual quantity. So we'll take 10,200 actual labor hours and multiply it by our standard price of labor from the standard cost card, $12 per hour. Using Excel to calculate that number, 10,200 multiplied by 12 gives us a middle prong of $122,400. Now, on the right-hand prong, we're going to calculate our standard cost of labor. We already know the standard price is 12. So all we need to do is calculate the standard quantity of labor. So if you remember, our standard quantity is the standard quantity allowed for the actual units produced, and we can see our actual units produced, 12,000. So in this case, our standard quantity is the labor hours. We would budget for 12,000 units produced. So we're going to notice on our standard cost card that our standard quantity of labor is 3/4 of an hour for 1 unit. So our standard quantity becomes 12,000 units multiplied by our standard of 0.75 hours per unit. So letting Excel calculate that number, 12,000 multiplied by 0.75 gives us a standard quantity of labor of 9,000 hours. So our standard price of labor is going to be 9,000. Our standard quantity multiplied by our standard price of 12. So we'll take 9,000 multiplied by 12, and we get a standard price of labor of $108,000. So now our total variance becomes the difference between our standard and our actual. So our total variance, we take the standard of 108,000, we subtract the actual of 119,850, and we notice we get a negative number. In this case, the negative number is bad because it means we have an unfavorable variance. It means that we spent more than our budget. So we budgeted at 108,000 for labor, and we actually spent 119,850. So our total variance is 11,850 unfavorable. Now we're going to break up that total variance into a price variance and a quantity variance. So our price variance is the difference between the middle prong and the left-hand prong. So we're going to take 122,400. We're going to subtract the 119,850. $122 minus the 119,000, and we get a positive $2,550 price variance, and that is favorable. That means that we spent less per hour on our labor than we expected. The actual cost of our labor was less than $12 per hour. Now, to calculate our quantity variance, we're going to take the right-hand prong and subtract the middle prong. So we're going to take 108,000 and we're going to subtract 122,400. So letting Excel calculate that number, I take 108,000, I subtract 122,400, and we get a negative 14,400. Once again, when we compare two numbers, the one on the right is the budget, the one on the left is actual. In this case, we budgeted 108,000. It came in at 122,400. That is unfavorable. And in this case, you're going to notice that 2,550 minus 14,400, 2,550 minus 14,400 gives us a negative 11,850. So what do these variances mean? The unfavorable total variance means that we spent more on labor than we expected. The favorable price variance means that we spent less per hour on labor than expected. And finally, the unfavorable quantity variance means that we used more labor hours than expected.